Hi, my name is Eric Shikatano. I'm a reporter with the Daily Item, and today we're joined by Emily Mrusko with the Union-Snyder Community Action Agency. Today we're discussing food insecurity, something that's been exaggerated by the COVID-19 crisis. Emily, can you give us an idea of what your agency experienced before the pandemic set in terms of food insecurity, and how the pandemic exaggerated this need?
Yeah, great question. I mean, food insecurity is not a stranger to our region. We all know that. We've all known before this pandemic that there have been hundreds of households that have struggled with food insecurity, specifically within Union and Snyder counties. And before the pandemic hit, Union-Snyder Community Action Agency took a role by we've long term been administering 4 food pantries across our counties, one in Selinsgrove, Mifflinburg, McClure, and Lewisburg. And so those food pantries have been long withstanding, and they are serving as a really vital part of the pandemic response today. But before the pandemic, those food pantries have been vital to helping people get food on their tables in a consistent way. And we've also been working with other community agencies to uh, provide emergency food assistance for people before the pandemic.
What type of inventory did the pantries have before the pandemic, and how is it? Are they exhausted now?
So the inventory before the pandemic for our food pantries they traditionally rely on food from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, as well as food that we order through local distributors such as Reinhardt's. And the food that we can purchase through large scale distributors like Reinhardt's, it comes from state and federal funding sources that have been pretty consistent. And I must say, during this time, our state funding sources have been nothing but supportive and communicative with us. The Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, just like other food banks and pantries in our region, are also hit really hard with supply. And the issue on supply is definitely real, but we've all been really creative and innovative to address those needs. So while what we're seeing from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank is perhaps different than it was before the pandemic, we still see them as a reliable source for our supplies for our pantries.
What can you say about demand? Obviously it's broadened, but what types of individuals are in need? And I imagine it's not just the picture that people might have in their brain when they think of poverty. I'm imagining it's a
That's
lot
a
more.
really good question. The, yeah, that's been the biggest hit for our agency and what we've been learning about the families who need food assistance right now. Many of these families are going to pantries and distributions for the first time ever. And that could be due to loss of employment, so loss of a steady income, and they can no longer have that income to provide groceries. Sometimes families are sacrificing food for keeping up with their utility bills and their rent, and so food can oftentimes be that piece that's sacrificed. Unfortunately, there's also people who can't leave their homes because perhaps they're over the age of 65 and they don't feel comfortable doing so. They're at risk with an underlying health condition. Or something that we've been seeing too is even people who have traditionally been going to our food pantries can't actually make it to the pantry date because either, again, they are within that at-risk category, or the transportation. We know that transportation isn't a stranger to our region either, the issues surrounding transportation. And oftentimes customers have relied on others for rides. And now people aren't as comfortable giving people rides to distributions or the grocery store. So that transportation net has been pulled out from a lot of folks. And so that's sacrificing food options as well. And I also have to just throw in childcare also affects food insecurity. If you have kiddos at home and you don't feel comfortable or don't have support to leave them and go to a distribution, which could take some time, or go to the grocery store, again, you might be sacrificing that food resource.
How can people help?
So people can help in a variety of different ways. And like everything else, it doesn't look as traditional as it might have been beforehand. For example, volunteering. Volunteering has been tricky during the pandemic because, once again, we want to try to respect the social distancing guidelines that are put in place by the state. And so we have been really resourceful with our food pantry volunteers who have been steady and consistent. And, instead of, we've been working on redirecting people who want to volunteer traditionally in person to either host a food drive. We have an Amazon wish list up on our website that people can order food and basic needs supplies that we are delivering to people's doorsteps. And so they can just order and support that program right from the safety of their own home. People can also, the Greater Susquehanna Valley United Way is also collecting a list of volunteers to be dispersed throughout the community for other ways as well.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.